Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be talking about Legendary Heroes, Legendary Lords, but in the FLC format. You see, in Shadows of Change, Legendary Heroes are kind of being treated with center stage. Now, it's a good thing because a lot of us have been asking for Legendary Heroes, where for the FLC we ended up getting a called Hellbrass. And he's a very, very cool character. You can tell that a lot of attention to detail went to him. My only real issue with him is that we already had a Legendary Hero with Tzeentch in the DLC, so it felt like there was a very obvious power imbalance. As let's be honest, Cafe could have done with a Legendary Hero just to give them a little bit more of a strength bonus, not so much for Yuan Bo, but for the other dragon siblings. Thankfully, in Thrones of Decay, it does seem like things are going to get better, as it's kind of hinted that we're going to get a Dwarf Legendary Hero for free, and I'm imagining that we're going to get a Nurgle Legendary Hero for the DLC, as, yeah, I know Chaos is getting a lot of attention, but this was kind of expected. Hell, I think very early into the development of Warhammer 3, when they started teasing that they were going to start working on the project, they did say that it was going to be Total Chaos, and yeah, let's be honest, Nurgle needs a Legendary Hero more than anyone else in the Chaos factions, that's for sure. This might actually show a change of development plans as they were working on the roadmap, and it was too late for Shadows of Change because of, well, it already being greenlit, probably in devlock in certain locations, and that makes sense. Again, very happy with Legendary Heroes, but the main issue here is that I'm not happy that we're missing out on Legendary Lords. FLC Legendary Lords are actually a big ticket item to keep people invested into the game. Characters such as Dryka, Imrik, Morga, just a lot of FLC characters that we have had have been instrumental in keeping the popularity of the game forward. And I think that it needs to return. Sure, they might have realized that they can sell characters in groups of 3 instead of groups of 2, which by the way is still the same format, just they're charging you more, because we used to just get 2 characters and 1 for free. Or better yet said, we used to get 2 playable factions paid and 1 character for free for a lower price, but now it's turning into a yeah, it's been a shit show. Let's not sugarcoat it. But let me tell you why a 4th Legendary Lord in the form of an FLC would actually be the best idea for the future of not only the game, but basically everyone's sanity, and possibly pacify the fan base a little bit more. So let's use the example of Thrones of Decay, the DLC that we're expecting next. Whether it's this year or it's been delayed until next year, we don't know just yet, but let's just say that the Legendary Lords, the paid-for ones, are going to be Tamokon, Elsef, as that would mean that Tamokon and Elsef would have a narrative against each other, and we know it's a dwarf, so let's just use Joseph Bugman. I know some people are going to say otherwise, but hey, this is purely hypothetical. So again, if it's Tamokon and Elsef, they're likely going to be fighting against each other, which makes perfect sense. You know, the Throne of Chaos book is one of the best that Games Workshop have ever released in terms of a campaign supplement, and yeah, I mean, we'd expect some sort of narrative against them. This would leave Bugman without a fighter. He'd have his own separate campaign. If you don't know, in Shadows of Change, all the factions kind of have their own arcing narratives, and they don't really join up. But what if an FLC Legendary Lord was introduced to be part of the story? Here, another character, say for example, likely an orc to be honest. This orc could be introduced to fight against Joseph Bugman in the narrative, meaning that you would get part of the DLC story as part of the FLC. You'd only be seeing one side of it though, right? So if you're not interested in this new DLC, be it because the characters might not be too interesting, or you just don't like the price, because let's be honest, it's likely going to be again 25 euros or 20 pounds, then you could play with the FLC character. You play through his story, and what would be interesting is just put him in the Immortal Empires rather than the Realm of Chaos map, as that would mean that the Realm of Chaos map would not be as congested with 4 characters being introduced per DLC, but one specifically for Immortal Empires, which we've already had before with the implementation of Dryka. So yeah, if you've played through the story through a free method, obviously only seeing one part of it as that would be one of the factions, then that might incentivize you to purchase the DLC to see the dwarf side of the story, and then obviously check out the other story too, you know, Tamokon versus Elsef. Again, we don't know if these are the characters, I'm just using them as random examples, right? And I'm fairly obvious that a bunch of people would buy the Tamokon DLC anyway because it's Tamokon, right? It's one of the bigger characters. But this is something that could be taken into the future. So the reason why this would be good is because this is likely going to be the format going forward. We've seen free DLCs lined up in the roadmap, so why not take advantage of that? The main thing here, and Creative Assembly need to realize this too, is that many factions are being close to done in terms of units. We don't have that much. If you go through, I don't know, the wiki, the army books, the supplements, everything, most of the factions are getting closer and closer to completion, which means that they're not going to get much DLC in the future, unless Creative Assembly and Games Workshop come into some sort of agreement, which will allow them to use the Warhammer the Old World miniatures, because we do know that there's new units coming for that. Hell, we've just seen some new Bretonnians, the ones on foot, which again look absolutely amazing. There's people claiming that this wouldn't be a thing, but let's be honest, it's already been a thing. I know some Creative Assembly staff member will right out said, it's like, oh, we can't use it, it's a different IP, but they're already using Kislev and Cafe, so, I mean, why one thing and not another? It's very obvious that agreements can be had. Same reason why you're using the Greater Demons from Age of Sigmar and 40k rather than using the ones that we had in Warhammer Fantasy. But if that's not the case, what we do have is an abundance of characters, so it's not like they can't justify all the work that they're doing on this DLC and bring in more FLC characters. Well, we have a lack of units, we have so many characters that it's actually hard to remember them all. A bunch of them had miniatures, a bunch of them just had artwork, and the grand majority of them were just basically introduced via lore, but that's pretty much it. But there's so many characters. You could go with Crag the Grim, for example, for a dwarf, or for the example of Friends of Decay, if they're going to introduce a greenskin, well, why not Gitilla the Hunter? Bring in Gorfang Rockgut, or hell, why not Gorbad Ironclaw? It's a character that was mentioned quite a lot, and people would be like, well, what's the difference between him and Grimgor? Well, really, just weapons, I guess. They're both Black Orcs, and the problem is that a lot of these characters are going to be very much the same. If you go through the list of characters introduced for the dwarves, many of them are likely going to be the same. But if it's an FLC character, it doesn't matter if they're similar in terms of fighting style to other characters, only that they have some unique mechanics to differentiate their playstyle. And it doesn't have to be completely unique mechanics too. When it comes to FLC characters, they can just rehash stuff that's already implemented, just give it a different skin. Two paid characters, Volkmar and Manfred, didn't have unique mechanics, and now they've just reused the Tomb King one, which in all honesty is fine, because at the end of the day, now they've got something to play around with, and they've got something to differentiate them from the other factions of their specific race. Hell, if we look at one of the newer characters that we've paid for, right, Mother Ostenkia, she's basically just using Grom's Cauldron, or even just Nurgle's Plague mechanic. It's just rehashed to be something different. But as you can see, something like this would work out very, very well, and just have a little bit of fun with it. Fill out the world, flesh it out a little bit more, but also give reasons for people to have something unique in-game. Pair this with the FLC Legendary Heroes still remaining, and obviously the paid ones too, and that means that every DLC would have, what, a set of 5 characters? It's still not going to make that much of a dent in how many characters are in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, believe me, especially since we know that we've only got around 3 to 4 years left of content. But what it will do is it will make the community happier. It will allow for a little bit more stress relief when it comes to releasing a DLC for €25, which would equate to more sales. Obviously, more units need to be added in. I'm not saying that this is going to fix everything, but it would equate to some more sales, which would mean that Creative Assembly will have some steady cash flow coming in. This is their only proper active title. Pharaoh doesn't really count unless something drastically changes. So, yeah, this needs to be done. None of us want to see this game fail, but we also want to play a game where we're feeling that we're not getting ripped off. So this is definitely going to be something that I feel like Creative Assembly should take into account and should consider. Maybe it's too late for Thrones of Decay, you never know, considering that we don't know if it's coming in December or not. There's no information. Someone said that they were still in schedule, obviously. Creative Assembly did post on that forum, but Creative Assembly posts a lot of things, like for example, there's still Northern Lords DLC coming for Three Kingdoms, isn't there? So yeah, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm just throwing an idea out there because at the end of the day, we need some push from Creative Assembly to win back the community. It's getting to the point that, yeah, it's becoming awful, and it feels like Creative Assembly are just dying, and they're fully aware of this, but then just not doing anything about it. This is something that, funny enough, in real life you can see that. There's people who damage their health with bad decisions, you know, drugs, alcohol, all this type of stuff. And despite the fact that they know that they are frankly destroying themselves, they refuse to actually do anything about it. They refuse to change things around when they know it could be done. It's ridiculous. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I do apologize for the little rant at the end, but I am frustrated. Have a good day, guys.